Cradle, The Rise of the Chosen, Chapter 13, Part 1. Hunti Jiel? Is this really necessary? Takuma asked Gianoa. He was referring to the intensely colorful, both in actual color decorations and also the colors of all the celebratory moods, procession as he and his queen made their way out of the palace towards the Juli Grand Forest to the west. Yoli, Aeji, Guntio, Yuniji, Riji, Niti, Dulumi. I already told you, our first trip out the palace must be celebrated by our tradition. Tiku, Hujial. I thought you followed the one God. Ritulu, Jija Dumul. We do, like I said, tradition, Gianoa explained. That shut up Takuma for the time being. He looked over at the crowd and smiled pleasantly and waved many times until they left the crowds at the main gate and embarked on the wide stone path to the Juli. He knew the provisions were plentiful, seeing as they have sukji, pack mules, but he was hungry and something was telling him to try to stretch out his meals. He didn't know if that meant there would be an ordeal ahead or if he needed to fast to get his spirit right. He knew for sure, though, that it was his Itoriyama hinting. As he told Kudos back when, they mostly watched and only cared to tickle him when they could be bothered. Upon going underneath the forest canopy for the first time, he and Gianoa held hands, and she rubbed his arm with her supple palm and even kissed his shoulder. He didn't know why that made him so happy, but he earnestly wished it was still fresh when they got old, and that was if he lived to be old. He remembered the sacrifice on that mossy stone and looked into his wife's eyes to wash it away. The elephant that their little canopied litter was on could only take them about 20 miles into the forest before they had to go on foot. The path got a lot more dicey beyond that, and Trieta, the elephant, was old and had to be ridden sparingly. Gianoa loved Trieta because she'd been her personal Biombika spirit friend in animal form since she was 4, and Trieta was always calm and patient with her. So as they departed ways, Gianoa rubbed the side of Trieta's trunk and said, Jijula, Ioi, Oyoyu, Niti, be good, me and you for good. Takuma could only dream of owning an elephant, but he was happy his wife had been blessed in this life. He didn't know what their future held, but if the darn world would straighten up, maybe he could have a good life with his own family. That got him thinking about his old one. Were his mother and father still alive? Did they even care about him anymore? What would he say if he ventured to see them? It was all Dixu, bitter crap to him, and he put it out of his mind and tried to think of how he was actually going to reverse these plagues. The Vocalman gave no hints. He had never learned too much about the Asul Mintul, true father, so addressing him could be difficult. He did have a faith that he couldn't track back to any experience or time he'd been through. It was as if he knew something would fall into place and he'd either die with the Pohira or not. They made it 50 miles deep into the outer heart of Juli and stopped at a pond on the west side of a little stream. Miuthu, why haven't you eaten? Gianoa asked him. He ignored her for a moment and then patted his left shoulder, a gesture that meant he didn't want to talk about it. She stared at him for a couple of moments and then rocked to get out of her seating position, and Takuma knew he better start his marriage on the right foot. Bintulu, I owe you. I don't want to die on you, Takuma said as he grabbed her arm to keep her seated. Ituit min niman io, trying to get my spirit together. Hitolominia oyoji, you still need something to eat. Biolti, jajio mul, thanks, but I have a feeling. Biondil Itroyama, coming from my eyes, Takuma explained. She didn't say another word and kissed him on the cheek, and after 30 minutes they left and went back on the dicey path that led southwest to the Pojira. It was the next morning and they slept well in a large tent. After a breakfast of fruits and grains, he was surprised that she was still eating ayuman as he did. The walk was more welcome than it had been when they set out for the night. Gianoa was even trying to get Takuma to laugh, and he knew because part of him was walking like a dead man. He joked back with her, but was going through the motions. He kept thinking about how unfair to his queen it would be because he died for this. He knew he owed everything to the one true father, but he loved Gianoa in an intense and insane, to normal people, way. "Just don't punch me again. You have a mean jab," Takuma joked. "Nito, Lumi, Puaga, Yuoti, Bol. You should talk. You knocked out my brother," she said. Takuma looked to see if she was serious, and her face was stone. He tried quickly to think of a way to walk it back, but before he could, she erupted in a big toothy laughter. "Jiju Ami, Amlu, he deserved it," she finally said. He put his arm around her waist and kissed her, and they continued walking at a steady pace until nightfall, stopping twice for meals and rest. It would have been impossible to walk the whole way back to the Porhia. They need to walk one more day to get to Himuli train and take it to the station about 10 miles from his village. On the last night before they'd hit the Himul, after a last trek, Takuma woke up Gianoa. He was asleep, but he could sense his consciousness. He was fighting some unknown force but couldn't move his limbs. He could feel himself simply drenched in sweat, but he couldn't wake up. There was an eerie and unnerving howl in this state, and there were distinct flashes of pure blackness and dark crimson. He would have killed for a sip of water, but he was stuck in this loop until he was completely exhausted, and then he awoke. "Muhammad, baby," Gianoa exclaimed. "Kia limo you were thrashing." "Jintui tomi tamul." "I know, there's something in my spirit," he explained. "Well, we have to take the day off. You can't walk on like this," Gianoa explained. "Gentili, ioa yoyi, rituliamol nu, mentul kipi." "No, I have to go on. I think the father is finally talking to me," Takuma said and locked eyes with his wife. "Hintumul multi? Really this time?" she asked. He stroked her dark brown hair and nodded and kissed her slowly. They spent another hour in the tent and then made their way down into the final valley on the west edge of Yun, a famous lake, and almost the whole way to the Himuli. At a few hours past nightfall, they had electric torches as suggested by Bull before he grudgingly gave his sister his blessing for this journey. There was a dense gray fog in the morning in that current part of the forest close to the Himuli. Takuma thought it was odd that he could see Gianoa clearly, though she was 4 feet away on his right side, but he couldn't see anything 4 feet away on his left side. So they carefully walked on, taking care to follow the blazed footpath until they could see clearly when the fog left. It didn't go as planned, and they made tediously slow progress towards the train station. They knew they probably had to wait because they had no idea of the schedule it ran on as to where it was currently. All the same, just making it there was beginning to be an ordeal. They walked on, placing their feet carefully on the sometimes curvy path until it was night, and still the fog stayed.